Mr. ID, Mobile Radionuclide Identification Detector, is a strontium iodide-based handheld gamma spectrometer that was developed at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory by the interdisciplinary team whose names are listed below. Radioisotope identifiers, or RIIDs, are used for search and identification of radioisotopes and are generally handheld or backpack sized in order to have sufficient sensitivity to detect and identify weak sources within natural background. These devices are quite useful and enjoy many applications. Users have several areas in which they think that these detectors might be improved, and one of them would be to have the spectral data be acquired and processed more rapidly. Another one would be to have the detectors offer more advanced analysis of the gamma spectra as they are acquired in order for users who may not be experts to know what the source is and what type of source they're looking at and what they should do next. So the end users are requesting RIIDs that will more readily screen out false alarms, provide higher sensitivity to the sources that they're actually looking for, and are user-friendly, lightweight, and not so burdensome to carry around. Gamma spectrometers utilize either scintillators or semiconductors. Ionizing radiation interacts with the detector material, producing ionization, which results in a pulse of light in a scintillator and in electron hole pairs in a semiconductor. The diagram on the left shows that an incoming gamma ray interacts via the photoelectric effect with a high Z nucleus, producing a photopeak, which is depicted as the recoil electron, and that allows you to make a gamma spectrum in which the pulse height is proportional to the incoming gamma ray energy, as shown in the right two spectra. You'll notice that the germanium detector, the semiconductor detector, has very narrow peaks. However, these detectors must be temperature controlled, and that makes them very bulky and difficult to deploy in the field. So for field use, people generally use scintillator detectors such as sodium iodide. The energy resolution of sodium iodide, however, as you can see in the spectra shown, is considerably degraded compared to that of the germanium detector. So what people would like is a scintillator that is deployable, does not have to be cooled, but offers better energy resolution than sodium iodide, and that's what I'm going to tell you about today. When you put a scintillator into a device, you have to also consider many other aspects of the device engineering, and that's depicted in this diagram at the bottom of the page. And all of these things must be optimized, and so what I'm describing to you today is how we took this new scintillator material, strontium iodide, and optimized a variety of other aspects in the device engineering in order to produce an instrument that has higher performance and better utility than existing solutions. Currently, the RIIDs that are deployed that are scintillator based look similar to the detectors that I'm showing here. These are two frequently deployed models. One uses sodium iodide, the other uses lanthanum bromide, and you can see their weight is comparable, around 5 pounds. The energy resolution of the lanthanum bromide is improved, and these detectors, while being very useful, still could be improved upon. In particular, the end users would like to be able to rapidly identify complex spectra of multiple sources with overlapping lines. They would like the detectors to be very sensitive so they can rapidly detect and identify sources. They would like the detectors to be more lightweight so that they can actually fit them in to their deployed detectors and more easily utilize them. Strontium iodide, as I mentioned, is a new scintillator. It was developed under Homeland Security funding by our team, including Radiation Monitoring Devices, Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and Fisk University. Subsequently, many different vendors have learned to grow this crystal, and they're listed on the right-hand side of this slide. And this new scintillator offers some great advantages that I'm going to tell you about in a minute. Here we can see the existing scintillators that I've mentioned to you already. Sodium iodide with thallium doping is the most commonly utilized scintillator for gamma spectroscopy. It offers moderate energy resolution, and its chief advantages are its growability to very large sizes and its low cost. Lanthanum bromide has a huge improvement in resolution over sodium iodide. However, it is more costly, and it has a disadvantage of having intrinsic radioactivity. Strontium iodide offers comparable resolution to lanthanum bromide as well as a comparable cost while not having the intrinsic radioactivity of lanthanum bromide. And at the bottom of this slide here, I'm again just showing that this crystal is relatively easy to grow and that many vendors are providing this crystal, including Cape Sim, who have established a production line and are producing high-quality, large-size boules of strontium iodide. Here I'm going to explain in more detail the advantage of strontium iodide over sodium iodide, and you can see in this spectrum on the left, the improved energy resolution compared to sodium iodide allows one to observe gamma spectral lines that are either completely non-obvious in the sodium iodide spectrum or are only very faint. The germanium detector spectrum at the bottom provides the clear spectrum of where these various lines are. And you can see that with the strontium iodide, there are quite a few lines that are very easy to observe that are not really present at all in the sodium iodide spectrum. On the right, we're comparing the spectrum acquired with scintillator detector of the same size using strontium iodide and using lanthanum bromide. And this is just counting on natural background. So what isotopes are present in our natural background? Well, thorium, uranium, and potassium are clearly observed by their peaks in the strontium iodide spectrum. However, in the red spectrum from the lanthanum bromide detector, none of those lines are easily observed due to the intrinsic radioactivity that is present in the lanthanum bromide crystal, which essentially washes out all of the structure due to the natural background lines. And the reason why this matters is that normally people who are searching for a weak source in natural background would not like to have this extra clutter in their spectrum because it decreases the ability to detect weak sources. Here I'm showing another example of the value of the improved energy resolution of strontium iodide compared to sodium iodide for the case of detecting the gamma spectra coming from uranium ore. You can see easily in these spectra that many features are clearly resolved in the strontium iodide that are not discernible at all in the sodium iodide spectrum. And these spectra were acquired by the company Cape Sim. Here are spectra acquired with a variety of different radiation sources as a part of a study in which we compared the performance of strontium iodide and sodium iodide of the same size crystal for their ability to detect and discriminate among sources when mixed into various source combinations. And this study utilized the RNAC algorithm set that is developed by Carl Nelson at Lawrence Livermore. here we can see that the false positive and false negative rate for strontium iodide compared to sodium iodide, mainly due to the improved energy resolution of strontium iodide, is significantly improved by factors of 2 to 3, and in some cases more than that. And that offers a significant usefulness compared to sodium iodide. This is the spec sheet of the Mr. ID detector, which you can look through for further details. The user interface is developed to work on an Android platform. There is an embedded computer inside of the Mr. ID detector that talks to the Android tablet. There are a variety of features, the spectral display, the waterfall plot, and you can see in the middle of this slide is a diagram describing the functionality of this software. This architecture allows for a single Android tablet to connect to multiple Mr. ID detectors should they be available, and that allows for data to be uploaded, for example, to a cloud or to another server.
I'm going to introduce you to Mr. ID, our mobile radioisotope identifier. There's a tablet that goes with the detector for advanced usage. It can be charged through these ports here off the internal batteries of the detector. There's also a micro USB charging port here. This detector can be charged off of any phone charger. It has very long battery life, even with keeping the tablet charged. We've booked it at over 12 hours. The simple one-handed use is great for search and measuring dose rate using only the onboard screen. Alternatively, you can use the tablet for more advanced capabilities, looking at the spectrum itself, looking at the waterfall plot, or going into more detail on the identifications. Mr. ID itself is just turned on with a single switch here. You can see it start to boot up. There's a small computer inside, an Intel Edison. It runs most of the server processes that control communication between the Bridgeport USB base and the tablet. It also runs the RNAC identification software. Here we're on the main screen where you can see the spectrum acquisition. We're looking right now at a cesium-137 source. You can see the 32 keV X-ray as well as the 662 keV main photopeak. The spectrum goes from 0 to 3000 keV. We have a dose rate meter over here and the real-time indication for your measurement. Right now we have it set on infinite integration, so all of the data you acquired will be shown at all times. If you're walking, you may want a 5-second integration. That way you're not looking at data that you acquired 100 feet ago, you're only looking at what you're currently passing. This would be for a search type scenario. I'll put it back on infinite here. On the waterfall screen, you can see the time sequence of the measurement. So same energy on the x-axis, time is now on the y-axis, and the heat map shows the intensity of the individual lines. Moving the source closer, you can see it get quite a bit hotter, the dose rate goes up, and you also see the count rate increasing, or the intensity increasing over here. Moving the source away, you can see the line became much weaker. And if we add another source to the mix, you can now see another line start to pop up here. And this is for zinc 65, showing up around 1000 keV. On the search screen, here you have your identifications, probability, shielding, and the type of source. There's the count rate meter and the dose rate meter over here. You can set thresholds using these sliders. So if we move this source really close, you can see we've exceeded our threshold, and it'll warn you of the high dose rate. Alternatively, if you set a count rate threshold, maybe you're more concerned about acquiring high quality data rather than a safety situation. And here we can see we've exceeded our count rate threshold. We've also ID'd cesium with 100% probability, low shielding, and it's an industrial source. And now we're also seeing the zinc-65 that's next to the detector and the sodium-22 I have sitting on the other side of the table here. RNAC uses a full spectral fit. You can actually see that it's starting to detect the other sources from around my lab. It has all of the ANSI radionuclides plus some other common radionuclides, about 60 in total.
Here I'm showing you the look of the screen as the detector is detecting a combination of sources, and you can see after 3 seconds the detector is already identifying cesium-137 and sodium-22. After 18 seconds, the detector is now identifying the full set of sources that it's being exposed to, and this is a very useful way for the detector to operate. I'd like to just put this into context that many of the other handheld devices only identify a single source at a time, or if they do identify multiple sources, they don't offer information about the shielding of the source and so forth. So we've tried to include as much useful information as possible. Here is a comparison of the performance of the Mr. ID detector compared to 2 commercial detectors with comparable crystal size, as you see there in the second entry of the columns. The crystal size is similar, the weight of the detectors is similar. The energy resolution of the lanthanum bromide and the strontium iodide are similar, while the sodium iodide there in red is considerably worse. Interestingly enough, when we approached these 3 detectors to this source, the 5 microcurie cesium source, the strontium iodide detector, the Mr. ID detector, was able to detect and ID the source about 3 times further away, which makes the sensitivity of the detection of this detector a considerable improvement over the other 2 detectors. Finally, I would like to tell you a little bit about what we see for the future of strontium iodide detector development. Silicon photomultipliers are the new type of photodetector that people have been developing for many applications, and it turns out that the gamma spectroscopy that you can acquire with strontium iodide with the SIPM is comparable to what you can acquire with the photomultiplier tube. And of course, the advantage of the SIPM is the robustness and compactness. Here we have a concept detector that in the future we're interested in developing that will be about half the weight of the commercial detectors that I described to you, and offering the comparable performance to what we just talked about for the Mr. ID detector based on the standard photomultiplier tube. Finally, in summary, the strontium iodide gamma spectrometer that I told you about offers no intrinsic radioactivity, energy resolution comparable to the very best gamma spectroscopy scintillator, lanthanum bromide. There are standard sized 1.5 by 1.5 inch crystals available from multiple vendors. We've demonstrated a prototype detector utilizing low cost, low power, commercial off-the-shelf electronics. We developed an Android device app in order to display and analyze the data from this detector, employing a very nice radioisotope identification algorithm, the RNAC package. And we think that the use of SIPMs could be a further advantage that could make these detectors even more valuable in the field, giving very compact, very rugged, high-performance handheld spectrometers. Thank you.